All right, we're good to go.
All right. So, back to Myriad plots with me, Jason.
And me, Mike.
Yeah. And this time we're going to be talking about preparation for games in all its myriad forms.
Yes, campaign prep, combat prep, scene prep. There's we have a few strategies for each that we we each use differently. So
Yeah, which is, I think, really helpful because there are a lot of different ways to prep, and I think it's really a process that each individual GM has to work out what is their best what's best for them. But I think we can cover some good guidelines.
yeah, yeah. Um, so while we start with campaign prep,
Okay. So, I mean, for me at least, this is probably the most intensive part of my prep. And I think for a lot of people, it's the most intensive part. Um, Unless you're doing some sort of improvised game like Apocalypse World, in which case you don't prep. Not really.
preparation is the enemy.
Yeah. But I mean, if you're doing a more traditional game like World of Darkness or D&D, that's often where you're going to spend a lot of time, especially if you're of that world builder sort.
Yes, yes. Looking for things to in the real world to build off of, and looking for and trying to come up with cool settings and cool places for the characters to have their lives happen.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I mean, a game always starts with me coming up with some idea of either a theme or how I see the action of the game going, and then just building out from there. And so a lot of my prep involves first sort of figuring out what is the game going to be about, what is the themes, the mood I want to do, what is my goal with the game. Some games are just there to have fun. I mean, just like any game. But other
Right.
games, I'm trying to actually sort of expand my skills, or I have this high concept that I want to explore, and so doing that initial thinking is an important part of my prep.
For me, I generally start with a location. I have themes that I like to touch upon in the game, but I am very I play a lot of sandbox. I run a lot of sandbox games. So in order to do that, I need to have a sense of the place
Hmm.
which things happen in.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's too different from themes really, because a place will give you that it'll have a sense of what it's about. So I think it's just another way of tackling the same problem.
Yeah. And it informs me, so that's where I start from.
Yeah, yeah. Usually a little bit further in the process, I will um, settle on a location. And if I'm doing like a real world, semi real world game like World of Darkness, that's the point where I will start researching, digging into the history of the location, the legends around it, the just weird, quirky things that every place has, and basically taking that and starting to just brainstorm up ideas for the game.
Um, I actually this is interesting because I once I have that general locale, I next move to talking to my players about the broad concepts of the game and seeing if I can get some sort of sense of what they're going to try to do.
Yeah, yeah, actually, yeah. So the for me, just to sort of spell out the process, it's come up with the concept of the game, you know, theme or themes that I want to pursue. Uh, Pitch those themes to the group, see which ones stick, which ones people are excited about, and then once I've got that feedback for what they want out of what I'm willing to run at the moment, I go back and we settle on a location. I start doing the research and building the world. There's a lot of back and forth, but that's sort of the initial process.
Yeah, I usually tell them when I'm running, only because if I give them a choice, they almost never pick. So I've gotten out of the habit of doing that. You know, I'll give them 5 choices and they'll tell me, well, just run what you want, and I'll be like, okay. So I'll just pick.
I find the more choices you give a group, the less helpful it is.
I don't know, Jay. I've given them 2 choices and they still won't pick. So.
Well, yeah.
Unless it's werewolf, because Rob will not play werewolf. That's the one game I can guarantee you he will not play.
You know what's funny? I was looking. So as we're recording this, Onyx Path as their Kickstarter for Dark Ages or Dark Eras. I forget what exactly their latest book, and one of the settings is going to be 1970s werewolf.
Really?
Yes, it just sounds like the perfect game for you to run Mike.
1970s werewolf. What city did it say?
I don't remember. Let me see. Do I still have it up someplace? Let's see. Bowery Dogs, New York City in the 1970s.
No way. I have to go back that now.
That's the game for you, Mike. That's it.
That's it. Rob's just gonna have to deal.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully with the other thing I'm working on, he'll be pretty happy by then, so he'll be willing to give it a go.
Okay. Yeah, you bribe him with the game he wants, and then werewolf. You just gotta deal with it.
Yeah. Here's your werewolf character. Hop on board.
Yeah. Or you could play the werewolf friend, who's some other supernatural if he really bothers him playing a werewolf.
I was gonna have him play a purified from Immortals.
Oh, okay.
I feel like they're a good tie-in with werewolf.
Yeah, they've got a lot of overlap thematically.
I mean, they're a little bit weaker, but I was gonna give him he can't die. That's a pretty big bonus.
Yeah, it's really hard for a purified to die. It basically involves mages.
Yeah. Basically, mages. I feel like whenever something's hard to die, that's the answer to how they die.
Unless it's mummies. Mummies just don't die.
What I haven't read The Curse yet. Is it good?
It's pretty good. It's not as group friendly, but I think we're getting off topic here.
Yes, we are. Anyway, so that's how we go, Jay. That's how we go.
Yes, I know. So yeah, I mean, one thing I like to do for prepping a game in the early stages is, and I've written tons and tons about this, is to do a prospectus. Sort of, this is my vision for the game, the themes in it, and what you guys would be doing. And I give them I give you guys a few choices, and I let you vote. 90% of the time, all the votes are like 3 to 5 on a -5 to 5 scale, and I just sort of look at those little minute differences to figure out what I'm going to run.
I know it was pretty close for Mage. How was it for Apocalypse World?
Apocalypse World. It was. I mean, we were voting between Apocalypse World and Trail of Cthulhu, and I think it was it was it was really close. Um, yeah, almost as close as Changeling, and what did we have up against Changeling?
Wasn't that time travel?
No, we didn't. No, it wasn't time travel. It was my space game.
Okay, yeah.
Time travel's next on the list. It's
Time
good.
travel.
Yeah, time travel versus a few other games. Doesn't matter what anyone chooses. It's going to be the same system.
Ah,
System is not up for debate, but genre is.
and that's gonna be Gumshoe, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I mean, I already have a lot of the pitches for that written up. So yeah. So my first step is to. I mean, in the process of writing a prospectus, that helps crystallize in my mind, the what I'm excited about in the game. It's, and so that's my first step of prep. And then once you've decided on a game, then comes all the hard work.
Yeah, yeah. Um, you have here written choosing important NPCs. Now,
Yeah,
this is probably the single most time-intensive thing I spend doing.
I try not to do much statting of NPCs because I generally find that to be worthless. Um, but I do spend a lot of time deciding who is important, and no matter how you slice it, well, I mean, unless you're improvising, it's you're going to spend a lot of time deciding, do I really need this NPC? What does he or she bring to the table, or it?
Yeah. What I do is I create the NPCs. I decide their general power level.
Hmm. Yeah,
So like when I was running mage, the hierarch, I knew that obviously she was of a certain level of political prowess. I
right.
basically assign pools for the things I think will definitely come up.
Yeah,
Um, and since mage, they include things in the setting like a verbal description of how strong somebody is in a certain type of magic.
hmm.
I make sure I come up with that. Um, and then everything else I kind of leave. I have a description, I have a brief history, and everything else is kind of in the wind.
Yeah.
Um, and I'll do that sometimes depending on the game. With mage, it was like my first mage game. It was like 200 plus NPCs I outlined before we even started the game.
That seems a little overboard.
Oh, it was totally overboard. It was and part of the reason was I just rewatched Gangs of New York,
Right.
and I was trying to accomplish that feel of in the square when they're about to do battle and all the different gangs are announcing who they are. That's really how I felt like Concilium meetings were, where like it was like when I first ran Mage, there wasn't all the other books out. I
Right.
had these Concilium meetings where basically showing up was important. So if you showed up, like you would get acknowledged.
Right. Yeah. For the mage game you were in, my big 4-year mage game, I actually had a really small number of initial NPCs. Um, I knew I was going to have the exile, Cicero, and I wasn't really sure why I was going to have him. I just knew I needed somebody who was sort of outside the established political order, who could be a friend. And I just love the name The Exile. From I just always have in my mind the second Matrix movie, the Keymaker,
Oh yeah, yeah,
and so it's just like that. That just stuck in my head. And then I also knew I wanted to have a potentially villainous, ambiguous character, not quite as hierarch, but basically pulling the political strings. And so that was Decima.
okay, yeah,
And after that, I think it was as characters started to come in. that I realized I needed some sort of mentorish figure, and so that was Athalia, which was initially going to be, well, I was Mammon's mentor, and then you decide you needed a three-dot mentor, and it's like, well, I've created Athalia, and I've got a rival for her, but you're not going to go with the rival, and I don't want to add more powerful mages, so you're going to get Athalia.
And it worked out.
Yeah, yeah. There was a lot of things that I ended up retconning later on, like um, uh, Athalia's reasons for taking you on as a student was added, I think, like in season 2 of the game or something like that.
Well, I mean, there's some things that you just don't need to explain right away, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
Cicero being an archmage, that I think was somewhere around season 3.
and that's perfect to me because that's exactly what I do too. You know, I had a character Dusk in the first game who I knew was screwing things up with time, and at
Mm.
some point I just decided, oh, this is one of the player characters
Oh,
who had, you know, gone through time. Um, so now he's like this guy who's just kind of like in the way, bothering people. Um, I also decided that you know I wanted to have like a technocratic like society, a like the technocracy from Mage's the Ascension. Uh,
right.
kind of a not like Rob really liked Mage's Ascension, so I was trying to bring in elements that would really catch him in that game. And you know, I want so I was like trying to figure out what to do, and I just started adding like um, connections between the players and this technocratic society, so there was some sort of face to it that they would acknowledge.
Mm.
Um, I'm kind of rambling, but uh,
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that's the process. You're looking for connections to the players, characters that bring out the themes of the game, and ideally, you're not making too many of them.
yeah, yeah. Well, you know, the next game I run is probably going to be really focused on the work of the player. So I'm going to be trying to make as few NPCs as possible, and that's going to be really different for me because I normally make a bunch.
Yeah, yeah. My first game, World of Darkness game, I ended up creating somewhere like 100 characters or so. I didn't do it all at once, but it got there. But yeah, it was just too many things to keep track of. Smaller cast is better.
Smaller cast is better. Although I do like having random mortals that show up in multiple games.
Ah,
So
yeah,
so for me, I have the same two paramedics that show up in every single game.
that sounds hilarious.
So it's a little Japanese guy and a tall blonde, and they're always arguing.
That sounds awesome.
And that's it. That's all they are. They're just people, just doing their thing.
Yeah,
But in these games, someone's bound to get picked up by an ambulance eventually.
that's true. Yeah, I love. I never make I rarely make them important characters, but I love having cameo characters from my other games pop up, just to imply that there really is. They're all in the same world somehow.
Yeah.
I did that with my D&D games, and I've done it with World of Darkness. Um, yeah, I feel like it just sort of makes the world seem a little larger, at least for my reoccurring players.
I think it does because the characters have a sense of history already too.
Yeah,
Even if I wasn't familiar with the characters in the D&D game that popped up,
right.
but there was a sense of history to the characters because of other player reactions, and also because you were it was easier to play them. I think for you because Like the Dark Master had a background.
Oh yeah, yeah, because he's got a ready-made history.
Yeah,
I know because I played that character.
yeah. It was important that the character wasn't there all the time, so that was really well done. I've seen it overdone, and that just gets tedious.
Yeah, no, I don't. If I have a recurring character, he's either going to be just on screen for like a scene, um, like I did in the Changeling game. I had Miguel show up for like, oh, I'm just moving my deceased aunt's goods out of the house.
Yeah,
But it
yeah,
implies that there's a connection between my mage game and my changeling game because the character shows up in both.
yeah.
Or I'll have the character be sort of a mentorish figure. So, for example, in my D&D game, I had one of my D&D games. I had Dominic Terrazine show up as the emissary of this of the machine goddess, and he hired the party to go investigate things because he's a busy guy.
Yeah, he's got time for that.
Exactly. I mean, he's helpful, and later on, he was really helpful for them. But he's more of a quest giver, or when they got really powerful, oh, I'll help you by dealing with this other problem so you can concentrate on the important thing, like defeating the big evil.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
You
don't worry, we've got this horde of shadow monsters. You go on and fight the main villain.
Yeah, like go be a hero. I got my thing going on over here.
Yeah. Um, and again, I think we're diverging from preparations.
Well, no, because it's part of it, and I think that does make it richer. And to some degree, you have to be disciplined from the beginning when you do that, though. You
Yeah.
have to put guidelines for yourself, so it's not just a DMPC popping in.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I think you have to do a lot of discipline just in general with the NPCs because we already mentioned how we retcon things, and you can easily find yourself in the trap where you've written something about this character and you want it to be true, but there are better ideas out
Yeah,
there about the character, and you might see something in the way that players react to the character, or you might have a cool idea one day, and you got to be willing to let go of that and pursue. Oh wait, maybe I misinterpreted this character. Maybe he's got this secret, or maybe he's not this schemer, and he really is in it for the greater good.
yeah. That's something on RPG chat the other day on Twitter. They were talking about series Bibles,
Mm,
where television series they have like a book of characters of the characters of facts about the world, and
right.
how they add things as they go. And I think it's you don't always have the best idea.
Hmm.
You don't always have the best idea for how the character is used, or the character. You never know which character is going to hit. I had a character in my demon game which was not supposed to be the antagonist. He was supposed to be not well liked. He was
Right.
supposed to be, a source of tension for the characters in the beginning, but not the long-term antagonist. But they wanted to murder this guy. Like, they were going to kill him. So he kind of became the antagonist, whether I planned it or not.
Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, in that case, you give the players what they want.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. I mean, this isn't a prep thing, but I've had a situation where, or well, I guess it is a prep thing. I had a situation where we were near the end of the game. The main villain had done his evil scheme, but the players had thwarted it. And by the rules, looking down at this villain, yes, all his allies are dead, but he's still a high level mage. And while he cannot possibly fight them anymore, he can easily teleport away to
right.
fight another day. But I'm looking at my players and it's like, yeah, they're just gonna hate me if I deny them this victory.
Yeah,
So that's the point where the discipline and prep is both restricting yourself in what you're going to do, but also being willing to sacrifice your prep for the good of the game.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, I guess what do you want to move into next? You want to talk about combat, or are we still?
Let me see. I think we haven't really talked about setting history. I mean, we've touched on it.
Okay, so let's go
So
to that.
yeah. So the other part of building the game, other than getting the NPCs together, is what happened before.
Yeah, I have recently posted on the blog the alternate history for, you know, um, basically the history of my setting, the
Right.
recent history. And I know that in your games you've done the same thing for you're doing the same thing for Rosebriar right now, right?
Yeah, Rosebriar. Actually, I'm going to do this extensively in and a few more posts. So Rosebriar has its own history. I mean, it's a fictional city or fictional town, but it has a history that I've written out. Parts of it are cribbed from Asylum. Parts of it are cribbed from Mysterious Places. Parts of it just are unique to itself. Uh, and also parts of it are generated from previous games I've run in and around Rosebriar.
That's cool.
Yeah, so there's one huge event that happened in 2003 in my Rosebriar game, which had a major effect in my first Changeling game, was that Thornton Industries, the big chemical plant in Rosebriar, shut down because there was this big shock in the parent company. There was something about the executive board dying in a plane crash on a trip back from the northern Canada. I mean, I'm sure they didn't get killed by Prometheans uh,
Definitely not by Prometheans.
as they tried to break the barrier between life and death. I'm sure that's not what happened.
They weren't crushing gears at all.
Yes, but I mean, that's the connection between the initial connection between Rosebriar and my Promethean game, and that was a major event.
Yeah.
The company shut down. Everyone in town started to worry that things were going to fall apart, and then it started up again. Everything was good. Well, not really, but better.
Better.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's that event, and then from the supernatural perspective, there's this huge thing that happened at the asylum over the past few years, where a magical artifact basically devoured most of the staff and then most of the local changeling population.
Great.
Yeah, so I mean, these are important things for the story. And there's other things I haven't included in there because I'm not sure how I want to codify it if I was to run it. But there's definitely vampire activity in town. Not many vampires because there's not enough people to support a large population. But there's
Right.
a few vampires, and they've had their own effect on the city. Um, and I've got little hints throughout all the articles um, of vampires, mages, hunter especially. There's a mummy reference that came out this week. It's very subtle. It's in one of the story seeds, but I like it.
Okay.
But one of the things I'm going to do in the last article for this is one of the themes of Rosebriar is alienation, because you're changelings, you've come back. The story that I would run for this game would be called You Can't Go Home Again. And so one of my thoughts is to do an slightly alternate history. So basically, all the characters have been taken in the last 10 years, and I just have slightly different alternate versions of pop culture. So instead of Twitter, there's Whisper, which is the little short character
Microblogging site. Gotcha.
yeah, microblogging site. I might have a different president just little things. They don't change the world as a whole, but they give that sort of off-putting notion that, oh, this isn't where I expect it to be. Things are different.
Things are different. Yeah.
Yeah,
Very cool.
yeah.
Now, do you think building a fictional city is easier or harder than working off of an existing one?
Um, it depends on how high the fidelity you want. If you want a really realistic city, it's probably easier to build it from the ground up for the purposes of a role-playing game,
Okay.
because there are going to be things that you need to change.
Right.
There's, you know, it's not always going to be convenient to, run with the real-world version of that city because you might look at it and say, well, I'd like to connect these two places, but you know once I start looking at the neighborhoods, they're not nearly as bad as I would like, or the it would take them 2 hours to drive from here to here, or something like that.
Yeah.
But if you're going to play fast and loose with a city, it might be easier just to go and run with a real world city because there's just a wealth of detail you can just mine from that, and you can get your Hollywood version of New York or San Francisco or Budapest.
Yeah.
And for a lot of games, that's good enough.
I've never actually run a fake city in the real world before, like in a realistic setting.
Hmm. Didn't you do like a Gotham?
Oh yeah, I did like a Gotham, but that didn't count. It's actually New York. I mean, that was like I made up some borough names. That was pretty much all the work I did.
Well, I mean that's a simple fictional city.
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, that's what Batman did, right?
Yeah, I mean it's just an excuse that Batman and Superman don't live in the same city, even though they basically do.
Yeah. I always confused me when they had a Statue of Liberty in both cities in the comics.
I mean, Metropolis is totally New York, and so is Gotham.
Well, yeah, and everyone's like, well, isn't it in Kansas? Like, well, but it's near a large body of water. How's that possible?
Exactly.
It makes no sense.
Smallville is in Kansas, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I don't know what DC. I was trying to figure that out today. Where the DC cities are? It's like where's Starling City and Central City? It's like they're probably all the same place.
Yeah, I don't know. I was trying to think of that too. I think Starling City's on the West Coast. That's my theory.
Okay, I was thinking Starling City was more like Chicago or Detroit.
Hmm. I could see that. That could make sense actually, because I feel like Central City is going to be like an Ohio or Indianapolis type place.
Yeah, yeah,
It's got that flat sounding, uh, incredibly boring name.
yeah. Indianapolis.
Sorry, in Indianapolis.
We actually like Indianapolis a lot. Just the name's kind of boring.
Yeah, yeah. Though hopefully the sewer systems will be nicer when I go to Gen Con this year. They've had a few years. I don't know. When I went to Gen Con several years back, it always stunk like hell every time.
No, I think it's where the hotel was.
It was when I was outside. The hotels were fine. It was just when I was outside, it always was miserably stinky.
Well, the last time I went, it was really clean and nice. So
Okay, well you've been there more recently than I have, so.
yeah,
All
yeah,
right. So yeah, yeah. So that's my feeling. If you really want it hyper realistic, go and zoom in on detail and everything is accurate. Fictional's probably going to be easier. Um, Otherwise, yeah, real world cities are just full of crazy.
full of crazy.
Yeah.
My next post is going to be about Manhattan. It's almost done. Probably going to finish it up tonight. One of the things I talk about is the African burial ground in New York City. The
Yeah.
hole, essentially, which they forced people of color to bury their dead in, um, in the 17th and early 18th century.
Oh, cemeteries in general, in any older large city is just crazy. Like I was at a talk a few years back about London, and basically the whole place is just chock full of dead people.
Yeah, yeah. There's just dead people everywhere.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Um,
also like just like things like the fire in Chicago, the
oh
theater
yeah.
fire.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You got the theater fire. You've got your great the Great Chicago Fire. You've got there's a whole series of fires. I mapped them out at one point because I had that the in our Chicago game I had the Great Fire Spirit. So I was like seeing like how often can I have the fires show up? And there's an awful lot of fires.
Awful lot of fires. And in New York City with all the different the race riots, you
Yeah,
know, and the racial and ethnic tensions, the ongoing racial and ethnic tensions, pretty much all throughout the city. Like it's it's as old the story is as old as the city itself. So
yeah. And then you get
um,
weird things like underground rivers in Manhattan or Chicago with the reversing of the Chicago River, or this crazy the crazy bit that I found. It's totally not true, but there's like this legend about a cholera outbreak that killed like 100,000 people in Chicago history when I was researching it. And I was like, huh, that's weird. Where would that even come up?
yeah.
Why is that there? Oh, that must be from like some alternate history that just got sort of quietly, you know, uh, disappeared or something, swallowed up by magic or something.
New York has North Brother Island with Typhoid Mary, and
Oh,
there's this legend of an evil spirit that was bound by the Native Americans to a stream that runs underground. That was then
sweet.
disrupted by the building of New York's grid-like streets. I mean, like you don't get more mage than that.
Yeah. So I mean, if you're doing an occult or horror game, yeah, real world is just gonna. It's just got chock full of ideas.
Yeah, there's a lot of weirdness out there.
Yeah. Actually, that's something I didn't put on my prep. But one thing I do um, around this point in my prep for a campaign is I just start collecting adventure ideas. Either things from the real world or I'll look through all my books and see, oh, yeah, I could totally do alligators in the sewers in this game. Let's have every possible concept I can have, see if I can connect them up into like arcs and things. And that way, later on, I always have this well of ideas to draw from.
Yeah, yeah. I do something similar. I usually collect links inside a folder
Yeah,
of stories, and then I do a lot. I do a lot of sandboxing though. A lot of times I just play off the characters
yeah,
and kind of say things to lead them astray and see where they go with it.
yeah. Cool. All right. So at this point, you now have a world
You have a world.
and hopefully player characters.
Hopefully.
So at that point, we get to adventure prep, or at the very least, the first adventure, which is always always interesting. How am I going to get all of these people to work together? And how am I going to get what the game is about in hopefully one good story? Sometimes it's easy. Like my Changeling game, it was very easy
Changeling was very easy.
because
Mage was a bit more of a challenge for you though, right? The first Mage game?
It was actually it wasn't that bad because we decided that you were all going to be working on the spirit world, and so I just made sure that there was nobody who could handle the spirit world. So a bunch of neophyte mages could be given this job uh, by the conciliums with the understanding that all right, it's your responsibility now, and now no one can complain to us about it.
Gotcha.
And then I just throw spirit problems at you.
Spirit problem after spirit problem after spirit problem.
Yep, until you guys became like masters.
Yeah, we were badass.
You were badass. um, so yeah, I mean, I have my way of developing adventures, but I know yours is considerably different.
Yeah, a little bit. Um, I mean, like I have a rule of three in terms of first of all, when getting characters together, I sometimes will just literally say you're together.
I
Figure
think
it out.
that's yeah. I've been thinking that's not unreasonable. I mean, you can even turn it on the players and say, so you and you are uh, out at at this location. Why is that?
Yeah,
Or
I mean, like let them fill in some of the details, and also just like let them have some agency over why their characters are together. It doesn't always work out. I mean, sometimes they say one thing and they end up fighting in character because their characters aren't getting along. It's well, then why are you best friends? But whatever.
yeah,
Um, and the other thing is that you know, even in my first mage game, I pretty much did the D&D beginning
uh,
of you're all in a classroom together.
yeah.
Everyone else is uninteresting. I'm sorry.
I mean, to be fair, my Chicago Mage game is sort of the same. You know, you're all sort of lumped together in what would eventually be a cabal. But I mean, we did establish how the various characters knew about each other beforehand.
Right. Right.
Uh, but yeah, I did sort of lump you all together. But I don't know.
So then, for adventure prep, from there, I usually just plan 3 or 4 things.
Hmm.
That's it. I have usually an antagonist for the adventure.
Okay.
I have a couple of goals I want to accomplish, whatever those goals might be. It might be to get the characters to work together. It might be to introduce an NPC. I plan for each session of that adventure, however long it takes. I plan 2 or 3 scenes, which both bring in elements for future adventures and also highlight certain characters and challenges. So if I want to make sure a character has spotlight, and this is something weird I do. So if a story spotlight is for, let's say, Alec, right?
Right.
The scene spotlights will sometimes be for Rob.
Okay.
So
No,
the
that makes sense.
so the one character story is driving the actual story, and the
Right.
other character is the one who's helping him accomplish it to hopefully build some sort of um, camaraderie or just like spotlight on the character as things happen.
No, I think that's pretty reasonable. I think that's a good way of balancing the limelight, giving everyone the amount of attention they want. Because clearly the story spotlight person is getting what they want because they're driving the plot, which means presumably their goals are the ones that are getting resolved.
Right,
Whereas the other characters get to look cool.
right. So and then the other thing I do is I don't have a set. How should I put this? I expect it to derail significantly.
Mhm.
So I really only plan like three things to happen that night, and I have some stuff in reserve in case I need to keep the game moving. Um, which is usually an encounter of some sort. Could be a combat encounter, could just be a social encounter. And those are floating, so it doesn't matter where they are physically. Those things will happen. You know, could be a car accident right in front of them. Could be something along those lines. Um, but the scenes for the story itself happen kind of um, whenever. So I'll start them on a scene. I'll let them role play until they're done, and when I feel it dying off, I'll introduce the next scene or I'll transition. Or sometimes I'll just like, if I then I improvise a lot too. So I'll
Yeah.
add in other scenes if I feel it needs it.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
I try to get role play going. I try to keep actual in character conversations happening for as long as possible because I really feel that adds player buy-in and player and substance to the characters themselves.
Yeah. For me, I mean, I'm much more structured than you.
Yeah.
I think it's just, I came to gaming from D&D, so it was all dungeons and pre-planned adventures sort of thing. But I feel like I in my career I've moved closer to your format. So for me, I generally when I create an adventure, I have not like a plot planned out, but I have okay, if this story is to play out, these are likely scenes that will happen. We will have our initial scene or scenes, then these will point the way to other scenes, and at some point we'll get to some conclusion, and I'll have that all sort of scratched out. Uh, and with all right, this is what the scene's called, so I can remember where we're at. This is where it's going to be set. These are the characters or obstacles that the group's going to need to know, or that I'm going to need to be ready for them to interact with, and any rules I'll need to know at that point. But there's no linearity to it, so the group can skip scenes. They can do scenes out of order. They can bounce around. And for me, I'm more interested in seeing how they work out the mystery of the adventure, how they collect all the clues and get to from point A to point B. Um, I probably don't do as much encouraging of role playing as I should. For me, I'm a little bit more interested in the action, but I try to make sure that there's a nice mix of combat and role playing involved in any given game. So I usually have, when I'm running an adventure, I usually have essentially the entire adventure planned out in terms of scenes, but any given night, that entire adventure may be completely, substantially different. So it may be like, all right, if it's a three night adventure, the first night I might have this whole thing planned out. And the second night, they'll have resolved some scenes. I'll have written some new scenes, and I'll have changed the ending because it doesn't make any sense anymore.
Right. Right. Yeah, and whereas I sometimes will have 4 or 5 sessions without combat.
I have sessions without combat. I don't generally run more than, I don't know, 2 or 3 without combat. Uh,
I think one of the most interesting experiences for me role playing was when I was playing Colt. So I was
mm,
essentially playing a combat character, and it was a role play heavy game, and he was a role play heavy character, but his stats were really combat oriented.
oh yeah, you were. I think initially the most combat heavy character in the group. Though I think Valkyrie beats you out by the end because I don't know, being having 5 dots in weaponry.
Yeah. Yeah, I was at 4, I think, for firearms.
Yeah. Well, you're just a gunslinger. She was supposed to be the leader of the adamantine arrows. So
It's true. He's supposed to be. He was also Silver Ladder, which was everyone was like, huh, what? But
it made sense in game.
it makes sense again. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, but there's something to be said for your organized games, though. Like the difference in the play style. Like your games are so organized that I always have confidence as a player that we're going somewhere.
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, I think the amount of prep you need, whether it's on the lower end or a higher end, it's all about getting you as the storyteller or the GM the confidence you need to that you can project that out to the players.
Right.
If you're fine with like a couple notes written on a napkin, then that's the amount of prep you need. If you need that nice box set with all of everything written out, well, then that's what you need. You can work on trying to reduce the amount of prep you feel you need, or reduce some of the prep. Like perhaps you feel like, oh, I can run monsters out of the monster manual or whatever without being worried about it at all. Well, then you don't need that part. I mean, you can spend your prep time on social encounters or villainous plots, that sort of thing. Whatever you feel is your weak point, or where you feel you need that material to fall back on. That's the important bit of prep, is just filling that in so you have the confidence to run the game, and the players will feel that confidence.
Yeah, they will. They will. Um, it's funny because I sometimes will just walk in with literally 3 lines or some things outlined in my head. Um, but one thing I try to iron out is the challenges,
Mm.
just like the type of challenge, which character they're going to focus on, that sort of thing.
Hmm.
Well,
Yeah,
it
yeah,
feels important just to have an idea of whose focuses on what, you know?
hmm yeah, yeah. I'm not generally too worried um, about challenges. I spend a lot of time uh, playing around with rules and abilities of the combatants, but that's just because I enjoy it.
Yeah,
Uh,
I don't.
yeah, I'm fine sort of ad-libbing that to a certain extent. Um, for me, it's more just making sure that the psychology of my characters is sort of clear, because I notice sometimes I don't put that effort in, and then the characters become very two-dimensional and mustache twirling villains, and it just feels strained to portray the characters that way.
Yeah.
Either that, or I fall back into one of my stereotypes, like the random crazy guy, or or the person who talks only in enigmas.
Yeah, I find I lose their voice and they all kind of just talk the same if I
Yeah,
don't kind of really put the effort into understanding where they're coming from and what they want.
yeah, yeah. Knowing what they want is big, because knowing what they want and knowing where they came from really helps. It's what I need to portray them in a way that makes them feel real, at least to me.
Yeah, what they want, where they came from, and a something memorable about how they look.
Yeah, yeah. I need to do better on that. I feel like they all seem the same to me.
Listen, I what 2.5 years into a game and the characters realize the hierarch's black. That's not a good that was my highlight. Was like, because it was relevant to the character too. Is the worst.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I had a very defined image of him in my head, and when they were like stunned, they're like, I was like, what? Like how? No.
Yeah, I don't think I ever had that in my games. Yeah, yeah, because I think the main character, I think it was black in say the My Mage Chronicle was Black Dog. I don't think anyone forgot that he was a freaking ultra corrupt adamantine arrow. Uh, yeah, he was a nasty individual.
Yeah. I mean,
But
it's
yeah,
it's difficult though, because like sometimes I can go through a short description, and they'll be like, oh, so he's a surfer. I'm like, yeah,
yeah,
you know. And but that's it's getting people to feel rich to the players is a challenge.
yeah, yeah. Well, I find if you can get, like you were talking about role playing and player buy-in, I feel that if you can get that sort of conversation going between the players and an NPC, that really helps with making them seem real. Even if it's
Yes.
like another scumbag, um, like like in my Apocalypse World game where we spent 2 sessions talking about this guy who lived on the edge of town, and and then we finally have the meeting with him, and we had a really deep conversation with him where we learned that he is just a horrible person,
Horrible person.
horrible person. But I don't know, it felt real enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is the reason why my players often end up in diners. Each game has its own diner essentially. And the waitress or waiter usually becomes a fairly real character by the end of the game.
That's
You know,
that's yeah, that's interesting. I have nothing comparable in my games. I don't think.
it's in the most recent one, the waitress was dating one of the characters, so it's like it became a thing.
Yeah.
Um, also I tend to play with expectations
Mm,
of players for characters. I had a tough, hard as nails FBI agent who ended up being related to like the Guardian the Guardian assassin, you know.
mm,
So it's like the one character was always wore a hoodie, would pop out of nowhere, would threaten people's lives if they risked vulgar magic in order for something stupid.
right.
Um, and was not shy about it. And the other one was like this very like poised, feminine but strong, no nonsense FBI agent, and they were similar, and their relationship became clear as the game went on.
Yeah. Mm, yeah. So let's get back to some of this prep here. So combat prep. So we sort of touched on that a little bit. In that you do not enjoy it.
I don't at all. I made the mistake of trying to run an Iron Heroes game once, and that system is all combat prep.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a game that I probably would feel very comfortable running because, like I said, combat prep's not that big a deal to me.
Yeah, I have
But
no problem using a monster's manual to just run things right out of it. Like that's fine for me. You know, I have a harder time when it comes to sitting there and crunching numbers and really like because combat can get so boring sometimes.
mm, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's a difficult thing to do in interesting combat. To have a combat where you're pushing the characters to their limit, but not over it.
Yeah, you don't want to overwhelm them.
Yeah,
You want them to feel like they have a shot the entire time, unless the goal of the scene is to overwhelm them. Um,
yeah, but that can work. That can fail miserably.
well, yeah, it depends on how far along. If it's the first fight of the game, you're probably not doing it right.
Yeah,
You know?
I think one thing that I've learned is that however hard you think the counter is, it probably feels harder to the players.
Um, I mean, for your encounters, yeah, I could see that. For my encounters, sometimes I just don't think of something, and the players, you know,
Well, I mean, as you're
win.
running it, you're gonna see like how easily they steamroll over it or whatever. But however, whatever that assessment is, it probably feels more difficult to the players.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's something to keep in mind because I've played in a lot of games where it can get kind of frustrating if every combat is that sort of steamrolling. Is that that case where you're desperately trying to stay alive. So I mean, even finely tuned combats can be bad.
Yeah, I mean, like I try to have a good mix of goons and big bads, you know.
Yeah.
And I honestly I find that my players more easily roll over big bad guys than they do over goons, because just like fate. I mean,
I
I've
mean,
had I've had Alec build up like a tremendous number of dice against a big bad guy and fail, just completely fail to do any damage, and then like do like 4 damage to a guy that's only got 2 health left. You know.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
what I do, and I have no problem admitting this, and they know I'll do it, is I will kill um, enemies when it's most dramatically appropriate,
I see.
regardless of how much health they have.
I've done things similar in the past. Back in the day when I was running D&D second edition, I occasionally would have villains or monsters that had variable amounts of hit points. So basically, they'd be like, all right, this monster has at least this many hit points, but if they're gonna wipe it out real quick, we'll tack on an extra 30 or 50 or something.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Yeah, it's yeah. There was a particularly fun encounter with a spider they fought, where I basically doubled the thing's hit points over the course of the battle because they were just ripping into it. I mean, it was the spider the size of a house, and they were just dishing out huge amounts of damage, which in second edition is kind of hard.
Well, and you know when something's dramatically appropriate for them to kill it right away. Like,
Yeah.
like I made a mistake in one of my mage games. Well, not a mistake. The two players who killed the big bad guy were super happy. They caught him en route from one place to another place. I had it written in, and they killed them. They took him out. But the other players weren't there, and the other players were like, "Well, that sucks for us." But they all had their part in other ways. It's just that like I didn't want to just add hit points at that moment because they really were so excited.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
there's other times where it's like the combat's been going on for you know a 9 rounds,
Yeah.
and I can
Yeah.
see like people's eyes start to glaze over, and someone says something cool. I'm like, okay, and when they roll, I'm like, oh, they're dead.
Yeah. 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 I don't know that I've run any games, combats that dragged on that long. Maybe I'm just a little bit better at balancing things or deciding that the bad guys have something better to do than just slog it out with the player characters.
So my combats that have run that long, Jay, were goons. They were
Uh,
never meant to. They were never meant. It's just sometimes rolling. I've had players miss 4 rounds in a row.
I see. Yeah, yeah,
Um, but like again, it's just like even if like or if a story focuses on a particular player and it's their villain essentially. Sometimes they're the ones who land the final blow. It's just how it
yep,
is. You know.
yep. All right. Yeah, yeah. So combat prep.
I don't really do much of it. I
Yeah,
basically assign some die pools, and there's a variable number of hit points, and then it ends when it needs to end.
yeah. I try to do a little bit of thinking to make the combats interesting. Give the combatant some interesting ability that will come up hopefully, and just to make it a little different and shake things up. For some games, it's easier than others. Like D&D, it's very easy to, oh well, this monster's got poison that makes you dizzy or something like that. With World of Darkness, it becomes very easy just to fall into, and then he shoots at you again, or he throws lightning at you again. So I have to do a little bit more thinking there to make it different and interesting. Usually by giving them some ability that they weren't expecting. Like, oh yeah, and then he tears his face off.
Yeah, yeah.
um, so let's see. So I already talked about scene prep, and I think we covered adventure prep pretty well. Um, so since I'm a heavy prepper, one thing I do to sort of make it easier for me is I have templates. So like for my scenes, I'll have a quick template of title. Um, this is what the characters. These are the characters that are going to be there, both PCs and NPCs. Uh, this is what the action's about, and these are what the rules I need are. And sometimes, if it's important, these are the clues that point this way to these other scenes. If I feel like that's something that's necessary.
And this is where something you said about gumshoe comes in play that you wanted to try, right? Where if there's a clue in a scene, then they get that clue regardless of whether or not wherever they
Yeah,
roll.
yeah. So for example, I've actually been using that idea for a while now. My Changeling game that I ran with you and the gang. That game, every time you guys had an investigation roll that was important, even if you failed, you still got the clue that would get you forward. Um, if you made the roll, you got the clue and some useful context for the clue that may help you, further down the road. Not
Gotcha. Yeah.
just, oh, we need to go to the warehouse. More like, oh, we need to go to the warehouse where there are goblins, which is kind of useful information. You might bring a gun along or a baseball bat or something.
Yeah. Or a goblin hammer, Jay.
Yes, a goblin hammer, if you have access to such things. Yeah, one book that I found really useful in terms of prep is Never Unprepared, which is the complete game master's guide to session prep.
Okay.
It has a whole lot of advice for improving your prep. Um, one thing that I found that really useful is it breaks up the process of preparing an adventure or a game. So that you have a brainstorming step. Then you go through your brainstorm of ideas and select things. Then you take those ideas that you've selected and conceptualize the adventure from that, and then you document everything, and then review it at the end so that you have everything. You have everything for the adventure that you need.
Okay.
It's a really good book. I think I wrote a review for it a year or two ago.
Okay. That sounds really good.
Yeah,
I, I could see the value in it. See the value in doing the extra prep. I just have a hard time with it because, again, my players don't always follow the straightest of paths.
yeah. Well, I mean, the same concepts go if you're even building a sandbox. Is brainstorming what ideas, what NPCs, what plot hooks are sitting around in your sandbox,
That's true, yeah.
selecting the ones you want out of that, and then taking those ideas and developing them out, writing them up so that you can refer to them later, hopefully, in the middle of the game, or at least you've written them down so that you can remember that you wrote them down. And then,
Right.
yeah, so it's also good advice for just sort of scheduling time and things like that. So I found it really useful.
We should. I'll try to link it in the cast when we publish it on YouTube.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's about it for prep at the moment.
Yeah. I think we covered pretty much everything.
Yeah. All right. Well, that was a lot of fun, and next time we will talk about yet another subject.
We don't know what that is yet, but we'll figure it out.
We'll be prepared.
We will be prepared. Uh, Thank you for joining us.
Yep. And we'll see you next time.
See you next time.